Welcome to Bits About Books, the home for conversations with authors of breakthrough books on sales, marketing, and business. Founders, entrepreneurs, and individual professionals, we all need to keep track of ideas that are helping create our today and tomorrow. Bits About Books will strive to find those books and speak to their authors, go behind the scenes and understand what inspired the authors to write the books that they did and how they went about doing so. Through our conversations, we hope to gain insights that will help us to get the most out of our efforts. I'm your host Shubhanjan Sarkar, founder of Pitchlink, the next generation buyer-seller engagement platform where our mission is to make buying easy. Thank you for your time and for joining us in this session. I have a favor to ask. While you continue to listen to the podcast, please leave a comment or rating at iTunes or wherever else you get your podcasts from. It means a lot to hear from you. Today we have with us Dr. Dhruv Nath, co-author of the book Funding Your Startup and Other Nightmares.
You learn as much from success stories as from failures. In fact, you probably learn more from failures, right? So nobody talks about failures because failures are always kept under the wraps. So what we said was, okay, we will have an equal number of successes and failures in our book. And that is how we expect the founder who's reading the book to learn. Final thing, very, very important. In fact, I would say that is the crux of the book. What we realized was, it's very easy to tell stories. And this book is essentially about stories, right? It's about lots of stories. I think it has about 15 or 18 odd startup stories, right? And some of them are failures, some of them are successes. But the problem is, what do you take away from the story? Because ultimately, the idea is not that the founder remembers the story. The idea is the founder can apply the story to his environment, right? So what we said was, we will create a framework. And that framework I call persistent, right? The English word persistent, but persistent is actually an acronym. So each letter in the word persistent stands for something, right? And we said, persistent is the way to go in case you want to create a successful startup, A, and B, you want to get funding for that startup. Because what we say is, not only should the startup be persistent, follow the persistent framework, but the investor also looks for persistent startups.
Dr. Dhruv Nath is a professor at MDI Gurgaon, a director with Lead Angels, and an angel investor. Earlier, he was a senior vice president with NIIT Limited. He has been a consultant to the top management of several organizations such as Glaxo, Gillette, Nestle, Indian Oil Corporation, Thermax, Bajaj Auto, as well as to the Prime Minister of Namibia and the Chief Minister of Delhi. Dr. Nath has a BTech in Electrical Engineering and a PhD in Computer Science, both from IIT Delhi. He has written 4 books, the latest being Funding Your Startup and Other Nightmares, co-authored with Shushanto Mitra. Now listen to this entertaining episode with Dhruv Nath, co-author of the book Funding Your Startup and Other Nightmares. Dhruv, welcome to Bits About Books. I am delighted to have you on the show. Not many of my guests are out of India. Unfortunately, not many sales or marketing focused books are being written. And your book was instantly very attractive for me. And we'll get to that in a moment. Why don't you tell our listeners a bit about you and how you came about writing this book?
Okay, thanks for having me, Shubhanjan. It's great to be here. So just to give you a little background, once upon a time, I used to be an engineer. So I passed out of IIT Delhi and then I did my PhD in computer science, spent about 20 years in the IT industry, then got a little sick of chasing business targets, moved into academics. So as of today, I am a professor at MDI. But I think and I've been a professor for 19 years. I think the nicest part, the most fun part of my career has been the last 6 years where I've been a bit of a baby angel investor. So I invest in startups, of course, small amounts. I'm not in the Ratan Tata or the Azim Premji category at all. But I invest in them and I do a fair amount of mentoring. And it is such great fun. At my age, I deal with youngsters who are 25, 30, maximum 35. I learn a hell of a lot from them. Hopefully, I contribute something to them as well. And one of the things I've learned in the last 6 years is that a lot of these startup founders, they actually don't have too much clue about A, running a business, and B, getting funding for that business. So, which is where I decided, along with my co-author Sushanto Mitra, that's where we decided, look, let's write a book on our experiences, how the startups that we have met, the startups that we've learned from, and put it in the form of a book so that other startup founders hopefully can learn from that. So that's basically the background.
You said that you had you got sick of chasing quotas and numbers.
Yes.
so tell us a bit about that journey before we get into the book.
Okay. So I spent about 20 years with NIIT, and I must tell you, even that was great fun. So one of the primary things I did was I was a consultant in the area of how to use IT to meet your business strategies. And I was a consultant to a lot of large companies such as at that time Glaxo, Gillette, Hindustan Lever, Thermax, Nestle, and also one Prime Minister of Namibia. So it was great fun. The only thing is I realized that, towards the end of that, there were two things that were happening. One is, as you get more and more senior in life, you tend to become more and more of a manager, and you go away from dirtying your hands. And I was very uncomfortable with that. So that was one issue. And the other thing is, I said, look, enough is enough. I'm not looking for money anymore. I'm looking for fun in life. And I was always keen on academics, which is why I had initially done my PhD, which is where I decided to quit, move into academics. And again, I think it was a great decision. So both my innings, the innings in the industry as well as the innings in academics, which is about 19 years each, they have been great fun. And the real innings, the real career is now beginning. This whole
That's great.
Startups.
That's a great note to get into this discussion. So just to join the dots, 6 years back, you got into some form of angel investing, which gave you exposure to founders, which gave you the realization that they neither know how to raise money, nor they know how to run their business, but they are people brimming with ideas and they want to go out and do something. And this 6 years of interaction with various invested companies or people you met who you perhaps didn't invest in, gave you this impetus that we should go out and write a book on how to manage this process. Does that sum up your...
Absolutely. And I must tell you one more thing. So my mother is a writer. She is a very prolific writer. She's written about 150 odd books for kids. And I have written 4 books so far, and it's great fun to write, and I strongly believe, what you write should not be the Shashi Tharoor variety. It should be something that is simple to understand. It is something that is reasonably humorous, and, it should be something like bedtime reading. So I've had 4 books, like I told you, and this is the 4th one, and they've all been great fun to write. And therefore, I believe, hopefully, they will be great fun to read as well. So not only will the reader get something out of it, hopefully he'll also have a good laugh.
And that I can make out from the little interaction that I have, that you're a jolly good man.
Life is meant to be enjoyed. Yeah?
Absolutely, I totally agree. You cannot stress about stuff.
Absolutely.
So one question where I will start with is, did you have this idea and you went to Sushanto and said, hey, I have this idea and let's collaborate? Or was it his idea and how did it all start?
So let me explain. Actually, the idea originally was mine. So I must give you the background of Sushanto as well, and probably also myself. So I am a part of Lead Angels Network. Lead Angels Network is one of the major angel investment networks in the country, and I joined them about 6 years back, and currently I am a director with them. Sushanto is the CEO, the founder and the CEO of Lead Angels Network. So we have worked very closely together in building up Lead Angels, as well as getting members. We have taken joint decisions on investment and so on. Of course, he's a very busy guy, but I'm a professor, and therefore I had time, and I have been an author. So it was originally my idea, but what I realized was between the two of us, we will bring in very, very different kinds of know-how into the book, which is why I thought he would be an ideal co-author, ideal partner, and he agreed immediately. So, so I have spent a lot of time with startups. He has spent a lot of time doing things like shareholder agreements, valuations, and so on, right? Which I have not. So jointly between the two of us, we brought in all the material, and hopefully it's come out well. So that's what happened.
So let's start at the beginning, your cover. Why this reference to nightmares?
Very, very, very good question. So I must clarify, and now of course Sushanto, now that we are both co-authoring, I was very clear that this would be a part of a series, right? And this is perhaps the first book in the series. And it will be a series which is aimed at startup founders, right? So potentially the next book in the series could be something like people issues in startup and other nightmares. There may be another book which is on legal issues in startups and other nightmares, right? Essentially, what we are trying to do is we are trying to focus on different aspects of what a startup founder faces, and therefore try and cover each of these aspects in the book. So given that this was to be a series, we wanted a tagline, and that tagline would be common, right? So this one is funding your startup and other nightmares. The next one would be people issues and other nightmares. Third one would be legal issues and other nightmares. So that is why we wanted a tagline. Also, we realized two things. One is, as you know, I like to be a little humorous, so it had to have a slight amount of humorous content, and other nightmares seem to fit in well. Secondly, we wanted the series to look as though it actually solves major problems for the founder. And quite frankly, the kind of topics I've talked about, people issues, hanging on to people during tough times, getting funding for your startup during tough times, these are quite frankly absolute nightmares for the founder. So it was very apt, it was humorous, and it was a great tagline, and which is why we created this.
When you thought about this, and I also presume that you are going to see through the series since you planned it, and possibly one book every 6 months or 1 year or whatever, you have a cadence in your mind. When you thought of this first book, funding is an obvious choice I can make out, because talk to any founder and they will talk about funding. And very, very interestingly though, I must tell you, yesterday I was recording a presentation I'm going to do in one of the virtual global events, and my theme was why not to get funding.
Yes, that's very, very important. Very important.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll talk about that sometime.
Right. Sure. And you should talk about that. So coming back, when you decided that you will target funding as the first one, and which is the right thing according to me, how did you actually collaborate between the two of you, and figured out this structure?
So two things. First of all, I think one clear message which we got from the publisher, and we also were very clear, it should not appear like a disjointed book, right? Which means the style of writing from the first chapter to the last, irrespective of who has provided the content, should be the same. Right? That's very, very important. Otherwise, it doesn't read like one book. Right? So what we decided very early on was that each of us would provide the content, each of us would do the writing, but the final round of writing would be done by only one of us, and that was me. Right? And the reason why was very simple, not that I am a better writer than Sushanto or he's not. The reason was very simple. I had time. He did not because he was the CEO, right? But he had a huge amount of content. So the final round of writing was mine, and which is why you find the style is common across the book. Secondly, what we did was we started with what I would call a Dhobi list, right? Look, these are all the problems that founders face. So, for example, people don't understand shareholder agreement. People don't understand term sheets. People don't understand what it is to create a business plan, right? They don't understand all these things. So we created a Dhobi list of all the things that we found startups founders did not understand. And therefore we said, okay, now let's put it together. Then came the job of structuring this. And very clearly, I think fortunately we were completely in sync, both of us. Then fortunately what happened was it became fairly clear. The first part, in fact, the book is in 4 parts. The first part is the introduction. The second part talks about early stage funding, which is basically angel level funding. And within that itself, we've created 2 pieces. The first piece is those who successfully got funding and why. And the second piece is those who did not get the funding and why, right? So that's early stage funding. The third part of the book is about later stage funding, which is typically VCs or venture capitalists. And there, once again, we had the first sub part, which is, guys who were able to get funding, how they grew. And the second part was those who were not able to get funding, right? So introduction, angel level funding, higher level funding. And the final part was putting it all together in the form of the shareholder agreement, the legal issues, the term sheet, making a business plan, creating a pitch. How do you pitch to investors? What is the process involved, etc., etc. And I think we went through a few back and forths, but finally both of us agreed that this was probably the right structure to have.
I can see the professor part of you at work in the structure. You did very rigorous listen plans, is what I would say. It's time for a short break. Dhruv introduced a framework for success for startups. He and his co-author Sushanto Mitra, founder and CEO of Lead Angels, call it the persistent framework. Dhruv will explain what it is all about right after the break. Stay with us. You are listening to a Business Podcast Network original. Podcasting is the fastest growing content marketing opportunity, which is untapped. We can help you craft your audio strategy and help leverage the wide reach and easy streaming capability that the smartphone penetration provides. It is easy, it is powerful and personal. Talk to us to find out how podcasting can help you build your brand and reach out to your targets like never before. Write to us at bpn@bizcast.in. That is bpn@bizcast.in. Business Podcast Network. Podcasts end to end. Welcome back. I'm Shubhanjan Sarkar, your host for Bits About Books and founder of PitchLink. Right before the break, Dhruv introduced the concept of the persistent framework for startup success. Let's dive right in. What was the introduction supposed to communicate and what did you do about that?
So there are 2-3 things we said in the introduction. First of all, we tried to talk about why this book, right? And I'll give you a little background about our thinking when we started this process. See, what we realized was that there are a lot of books on startups. You go to Amazon and you'll find hundreds of them, not an issue. But when you look at startups in the Indian context, the numbers come down quite dramatically, very, very few. Even within that, when you look at books which focus on funding in the Indian context, it comes down to a minuscule number. Right. So that was number one. And we said, which is why let us start with this. In fact, our publisher also said, look, this is a very good open space to be in. Publisher, of course, was Penguin. So that was number one. Then we dived a little deeper and we realized even the books that exist on startups, frankly, They talk about what? They talk about Byju's, they talk about Flipkart, they talk about Ola cabs, they talk about Oyo rooms, Grofers, these huge guys. Now the problem is when you have a startup founder who's just about starting up, he cannot identify with Sachin or Bini Bansal, right? He will identify with the young guy who's maybe started off 2 years back. Maybe he's beginning to do well, or maybe he's failed, right? So we said we will focus on young startups and not on the Byju's and the Grofers and the Flipkarts and the Ola cabs of the world, because once again there are enough books on that, and there is probably no book on talking about startups that you can identify with, right? Third, we then said you learn as much from success stories as from failures. In fact, you probably learn more from failures, right? So nobody talks about failures because failures are always kept under the wraps, right? The only time a founder talks about his failure is when he's had a decent amount of alcohol, right? Otherwise, nobody talks about it. So what we said was, okay, we will have an equal number of successes and failures in our book. And that is how we expect the founder who's reading the book to learn. Final thing, very, very important. In fact, I would say that is the crux of the book. What we realized was, it's very easy to tell stories. And this book is essentially about stories, right? It's about lots of stories. I think it has about 15 or 18 odd startup stories, right? And some of them are failures, some of them are successes. But the problem is, what do you take away from the story? Because ultimately, the idea is not that the founder remembers the story. The idea is the founder can apply the story to his environment, right? So what we said was, we will create a framework. And that framework I call persistent, right? The English word persistent, but persistent is actually an acronym. So each letter in the word persistent stands for something, right? And we said persistent is the way to go in case you want to create a successful startup, A, and B, you want to get funding for that startup. Because what we say is, not only should the startup be persistent, follow the persistent framework, but the investor also looks for persistent startups. And I'll just explain that the framework. So P stands for problem. Are you solving a problem for the customer, whichever targeted customer you have? Because if you're not solving a problem, obviously there is no way in which you can make money, right? So that is P. E is earnings model, right? Will you be able to get money out of this? Will somebody pay you, right? R is risks. Obviously, there are risks which are associated with any startup. Do you understand the risks? Are you able to take care of it, right? Risks. S is size of the market. Because, any founder who creates a startup, he doesn't want to stagnate at 10 or 15 lakhs of revenue. He wants to grow. And you can only grow if the size of the market within which you're operating is large enough, right? So size of the market becomes extremely important. So I've covered so far PERS. Next is I, which stands for innovation. And, ideally, if you have, let's say, a patent or a innovative solution which is tougher to copy, then you keep away competition, right? So that's the innovative part. The next S is what I call scalability, right? Because the size of the market may be huge, but if you're not able to scale up rapidly, the other guy who has possibly put in more money, maybe got more funding than you, is able to beat the hell out of you, and therefore your startup is scaled, right? So scalable solution is very important. So that takes me to PERSIS. Then is T. T actually stands for team. And I would say at the early stage, the team is probably the most important, and the team starts with the founder. Because if you have the right founder, chances are, even if the business model is not the right one, he will figure out a way to make it work or to tweak it in such a way that it succeeds. So that is PERSIST. Then you have E. E is again very, very important. It's what I call entry barrier, right? How do you prevent competition from coming in? That's your entry barrier, right? Then you have N, which stands for niche. which basically means, if you're in a very crowded marketplace where there are just too many competitors and too many huge competitors. For example, if let's say, I'll give you an example here. If you take a look at, say, the travel space, right? Make My Trip is a huge competitor. You cannot possibly hope to compete with them and the kind of discounts they give. But one of the startups we invested in was a guy who said, look, I will not compete with Make My Trip, but I will focus only on boutique resorts and boutique chota hotels, boutique properties, unique kind of places which Make My Trip does not focus on. So he identified a niche within which there was not too much competition, right? And the last T after N, A stands for traction, because you can have everything going for you, great business plan, great product, great everything. Ultimately, you want business, you want customers flowing in, you want the money flowing in. So can you show traction? Can you show growing traction month on month, quarter on quarter, right? So that's our persistent framework. And what we said is, read the stories, but at the end of each story, we have analyzed each of these startups from the point of view of the persistent framework, and we try to explain why some startups succeeded and some startups failed. And those which failed typically did not satisfy one or two of the persistent parameters. And finally, of course, the English meaning of the word persistent, you've got to keep on at it, right? Yeah. Because, running a business is no joke. You got to keep on and on at it. So persistent is the framework that the book is based on. And I take a lot of webinars where this is what I keep talking about. So Shantanu does the same, where we say, try and analyze your startup from this point of view. If it does not satisfy this framework, then tweak it in such a way that it does. And hopefully you will have a better chance of succeeding. Not guaranteed. Obviously, nobody can guarantee that, but the chances of success improve.
Wonderful. So let's dive into the stories. I mean, you are fond of stories, so are your readers. So share some stories of success and some stories of failure that you have shared in the book and the lessons that they bring.
So maybe I'll share with you one success story and one failure. Right?
Sure.
And by the way, I must tell you, some of the failures in the book, we have taken care to hide the names of both the founder as well as the startup. It's not fair to share it publicly, right? So let me first share one of the successes, right? And the success story I'll talk about is called Squirrel. It's, by the way, spelled Sqrrl. All the vowels are missing, right? But that's how the founder wanted to name it. So, that's his call. Right? Now, what Squirrel does is very interesting. It starts with helping young people conquer the problem of saving. There are far too many temptations out here. You see a new bike coming out of Royal Enfield. You see a new movie. You've got to see it, and therefore you don't save. Right? But saving is a very good habit. So what he tried to do was, he tried to copy what our mothers and grandmothers used to use, which was that little earthen gullak, the piggy bank, where your grandmother spent, let's say, 9 rupees 80 paise and gave a 10 rupee note, got back 20 paise, the 20 paise would go into the gullak. So what Squirrel does is, it created an app and it digitized this concept of a gullak. And it says basically every time you spend, at the end of the week, Squirrel will figure out how much you spend, round it up to the nearest 100, and that rounding up amount is saved and invested somewhere, right? So what they did was, they were actually focusing on young guys and young guys who had not yet got into the habit of saving and investing. So typically their target segment was either college students or, people in their first job, let's say till the age of about 30, 35. Having got these guys hooked on to saving, then they started offering them paid products, right? So for example, they would offer insurance products, they would offer mutual funds, they would offer loans, right? So that is where they would start making their money, right? And they would typically charge a subscription fee, a monthly subscription or an annual subscription. And once you got that, you could buy whatever you wanted. So that is the Squirrel model. Now, if you look at this from the persistent framework, I won't look at everything, that will take too much time, but They're clearly solving a problem because people are not able to save, and they are helping you to save automatically, right? And the point is, if you have spent, let's say, 2,480 rupees during the week, spending 20 extra is not a painful process. So therefore, you don't mind spending that, and that spending actually goes into saving, right? So that's why it works. So you're solving a problem. There is an earnings model because people pay you for purchasing the mutual fund or purchasing the or getting the loan or getting the insurance and so on. The size of the market is huge because they are tapping middle class youngsters, and I would imagine the size of that market is maybe 15 crore people, which is huge, absolutely phenomenal, right? So if you go through the entire persistent framework, they satisfy probably all of these, except that their entry barrier is not great, because potentially somebody else can also copy this. But over time, as the brand builds up, as trust builds up, that forms a kind of entry barrier and hopefully prevents competition from coming in, right? So that's the story of Squirrel, and it's a big success story right now. I'll give you a failure, and I've changed the name, so I will call it WedGift.
Yeah, before you move on, quickly about Squirrel. How much money did you invest? Are all these companies that your company has invested in, or these could be stories from outside also?
No. Some of them we have invested in. Squirrel we did not. Squirrel had gone directly to a VC, but Squirrel is a close friend who was a member of Lead Angels, and therefore we know him and we know his.
Okay, and how much did they raise?
Oh, very interesting. So they raised in round 1 7 crores, which is about $1 million. And normally that's a very large amount to raise in round 1. Round 1 is normally, anywhere between 1 crore, 1.5, 2 crores. But the reason why these guys were able to raise 7 crores was, they went to VCs and not angels. See, angels normally will not be able to go beyond about 2 or 2.5 crores.
Right.
But the VC will take anything from $1 million upwards, which is 7 crores upwards. So that is one. Two is, these were very experienced founders. And in fact, the CEO is a guy his name is Samant Sikka. He's a guy who was a senior vice president at Axis Bank, right? Lot of experience and relevant experience, and so also his partners. And they put in between them 3 crores, right? So when the founders put in 3 crores, the level of confidence that, goes over to the investor is huge. And that's why the investor was willing to put in 7 crores.
Okay. Carry on. You were talking about the other story.
Yeah. But most of the other startups are startups which we've either invested in or mentored. Okay. So I was talking about WedGift. Now, WedGift is a very interesting concept. It is basically based on the concept of a wedding gift registry, right? As some of you are aware, in the West, the problem is in a marriage, 90% of the gifts you get, right, will be unwanted. You will get, a painting which you never wanted. You will get 6 crockery sets, 7 cutlery sets. So what the hell do you do with 7 cutlery sets? You need at the most 2 or 1. So the problem is a lot of these gifts are unwanted, which is why, at least in the Indian context, you have a circulation of gifts. When you get your wedding gifts at your wedding, you will figure out, okay, this 95% is to be passed on as useless gifts to the next guy who's getting married. Right? So in the West, they have this interesting wedding gift concept, gift registry concept, where what they do is they will create a site, right? And that's called a wedding gift registry site, a website, where the couple who's getting married puts up their list of desired gifts, right? And the card typically is an e-card sent to their friends, and the friends in that e-card will find a link, a hyperlink to this wedding gift registry site. So they click on that, and when they reach the wedding gift registry site, they see the kinds of gifts that the couple want, and they select out of these gifts, buy it on the same site, which is how the site makes money. And that gift is then, gift wrapped and delivered to the couple maybe 1 week after the wedding happens, right? So that is the concept of a wedding gift registry, and it works very, very well abroad. So these guys proposed this kind of wedding gift registry in India. Unfortunately, so they had some very good things going for them. So market size was large because obviously the number of weddings is large. Yes, the problem is the older generation typically wants to give cash, and culturally it is not acceptable in India to demand a gift, right? You'll get a gift, but you can't demand it, right? But what we felt was the younger generation, their thoughts are changing, and therefore this may not be too much of a bottleneck. However, there were a couple of things that we realized went wrong. So I'll mention one of them, which is extremely important. The problem is these guys were a small operation, and when they started, it was about, I think, 3 years back or 4 years back. Amazon was in full swing, right? Amazon obviously has huge discounts because they deal in bulk volumes, right? So what started happening was, and what we felt would happen was, the guest who wants to buy a gift will go to this wedding gift site, figure out what the couple want as a gift, then go to Amazon and buy it 20% cheaper. And that's the fundamental problem that these guys were not able to solve, right? So ideally, maybe they should have had a tie-up with Amazon where they said, we are a wedding gift layer on Amazon, the delivery is done by Amazon, but that didn't happen. So which is why finally we didn't invest in this company. And in fact, the company actually closed down, right? So today that company doesn't exist. So that's an example of a failure. And the problem in this case was they had no entry barrier. They couldn't compete with Amazon. So one of the parameters in our persistent framework, they clearly did not satisfy, which was the entry barrier.
Okay, cool. So if people are going to read this book to actually raise money, what suggestions have you given them beyond the framework?
Yeah. So, by the way, one of the things I mentioned to you earlier, I want to clarify. Unfortunately, funding has become a bit of a fad. And there is a very great statement. By the way, the person who wrote the foreword for our book is Sanjeev Bikhchandani, who is the founder and vice chairman of Naukri. InfoEdge, which is the parent company of Naukri and Jeevan Sathi, 99acres, and so on. So this guy had a brilliant statement. He says, look, the customer's money is always better than the investor's money. Because the customer's money means you have a good product, customers like it, and the customer's money will keep coming in. Whereas if you get the investor's money, but you don't get the customer's money, you don't have a sustainable business, because next round, the investor will not put in his money, right? So I think the key message that he gave, and one key message we give right through the book, is, boss, raising money is not a fashionable thing to do. Raising money is to be done if you need it, right? So if you don't need the money, don't raise the money simply because, you want to brag about it at parties, you want to brag about it to your girlfriend. Look, I've raised a Series A, Series B. Boss, don't get into all that. Ideally, you should create a business which is sustainable. You should not depend on the investor's money to survive. But you can use the investor's money for growth. So survival has to be on your own. Right? In fact, the investor, if he realizes that you need his money to survive, he will not even put in money at all. Right? So what we are saying is, don't look at money as a fad. Don't look at raising money as a something you have to do. Look at raising money only if you must do it. So it's a slightly strange statement. In a book which talks about funding, but we believe very strongly you should get funding only if you need it, rather than saying, boss, let's pick up the money. I'll give you one very simple statement from, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, our big bull in the stock market. He says, I can't imagine how for all these companies, your profit is the next round of funding. How can that be? Boss, the business has to make a profit. Ultimately, it has to be a sustainable business. You can't keep saying, I'll get the next round and somehow, somewhere I'll make money. So, creating a sustainable business is very important. Taking funding to grow, yes, is useful, but not taking it just because it is fashionable. I think that's the one key message I'd like to give to all founders.
Wonderful. Any idea how many who read this book will actually follow your advice?
I hope many of them. I must tell you that a lot of people have got back to me. See, we've put down our, and of course, LinkedIn, we are there. So a lot of people have got back to me and they at least say they will follow it. My guess is a lot of them will follow it for the simple reason that they can identify with the stories that are there in the book. You know, had it been Sachin and Benny Bansal of Flipkart, they would have said, boss, that was 15 years back. Today they are part of Walmart. I mean, how do you expect me to learn from Walmart? But these are stories of youngsters who are failing, going through stressful periods. I think everybody identifies with these stories, and which is probably why I think they will actually follow at least large parts.
Great. Would you like to say anything else about the book which we have not discussed?
So it is useful for a founder. It is useful. By the way, it's also useful for a person. In fact, a lot of college students are reading it. Those who are thinking of getting into entrepreneurship, right? So it's also useful for them. So, and I think more than useful, it is fun reading. I mean, you know, a lot of people have told me, and a lot of people fortunately have put up reviews on Amazon as well. They said it's been very, very useful, etc., etc. But I think the comments which I like best were the guys who said, "Oh, I picked it up at night and I couldn't sleep, and I read the entire book all night."
Oh, that's so rewarding.
You know, I mean, that's what one writes for.
Absolutely.
So it's fun. I think that's the biggest part. It's not a serious textbook. It's not a heavy thing which you read 10 pages and then you have to go and get yourself a glass of whiskey. No, it's a light, fun book, and hopefully in the process there are good messages going out.
Bits About Books is brought to you by PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. PitchLink makes buying easy by enabling high-quality engagement between buyers and sellers through its presentation and discussion modules. Sellers create customized sales narratives using sales collaterals and personal videos and reach out to prospects through a non-intrusive, buyer-qualified engagement. PitchLink requires no installation or download and holds the entire repository of sales collaterals and buyer-seller conversations. Talk to us to know more about how you can engage with customers without intrusion. Call us on 99021 631 32.
Wonderful. Dhruv, thank you so much for joining us in Bits About Books, and we should catch up once the next one is out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. By the way, I must tell you, so I don't only write about startups. My next book, which is currently almost written, is a book of pure humorous short stories about life in the hills. Because I lived in the hills as a little boy. And it's pure humorous short stories, a little like Malgudi Days, but much more humorous. And there is also a book of humorous short stories about life in IIT, in the IIT hostel, right? So, I mean, those are also on. So life is fun right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Keep enjoying and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. Great talking to you. Bye-bye. Bye, Shubhanjan.
We have a fantastic lineup over the next couple of episodes with great conversations on breakthrough books. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you do not miss a single episode. Thanks for listening. Thank you for being with us today on Bits About Books, where we talk to authors about breakthrough books on sales, marketing, and business. We hope this conversation helped inform and motivate as we all navigate a rapidly changing business environment. For us, these are enlightening conversations enriched with knowledge and expertise. We encourage you to go out and buy the book to learn firsthand and implement some of the great ideas we discussed today. We hope to have you with us again in the next exciting episode of Bits About Books. If you liked what you heard, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast platforms like iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcast from, and give us a rating while you are at it.
This Bizcast original podcast is produced for PitchLink, the next generation buyer-seller engagement platform, where the mission is to make buying easy. Hosted by Shubhanjan Sarkar and produced by Rajiv Aditya. See you next time and have a wonderful day.